Thank you all for coming this morning. I want to talk for a few minutes about the issues and our crisis in Syria right now and America's response to that. What I want to do is talk about, just for a minute, a little bit about the background, because that's important in order to understand where we are and where we're going. I also am doing this so that people of Idaho will understand what my thinking is in casting the vote. I do. A war resolution, I think, is probably one of the most important things that a United States Senator does in casting a vote on behalf of the people who send it to the United States Senate to review those things. And so for that reason, I want to come here and talk about it, and I want to subject myself to whatever questions you have in that regard. For most of you know, Syria is a medium-sized country. It bordered on the east by Iraq and Jordan, on the west by Israel, Lebanon, and the Mediterranean Sea. Arguably the most dangerous neighborhood on the face of the planet. It's about a 25 million person country. It is Arab in ethnicity and mostly Sunni Muslim, although there are numerous sects of the Sunni Muslims and numerous other sects of religious persuasion. It's an ancient country with a pre-biblical history, and that is a very sanitized version of what Syria is. The demographics today are that there are hundreds of sects, tribes, clans, political groups, all of which overlap and cross over. And they're religious sects that have great influence there. Today the country is governed by the Alawites, led by Bashar al-Assad, and the Alawites make up about a 15% minority. There is an opposition, which has been for the last few years attempting to overthrow Assad. The opposition is made up primarily of Sunnis, because that is the primary population, but it also is made up of a number of other groups that are highly splintered. We're going to roughly call that the opposition, but the opposition is made up of about 70 to 100,000 fighters. I know that's a broad range, but that's as best we can do. Are they good guys or bad guys? There's a huge argument about that going on right now in Washington, D.C., a lot of debate. What we do know is some of them are very bad guys. The opposition is made up with some Al-Qaeda elements, with some Nusra elements, and some Muslim Brotherhood elements, all of which are not friendly to the United States. Are there some moderates in there? There certainly are some moderates in there, but you've got to be careful when you use the word moderate, because in that part of the world, moderate means a whole different thing than it does here in the United States. The percentage of moderates versus radicals is debated widely. To give you an example of this coalition of opposition, and something that I think paints as good a picture as anything, they are heavily splintered. They're made up of hundreds of different fighting units. There is no single commander, although there's a few people that claim to be single commanders. But as recently as within the last 90 days, these groups have been fighting amongst themselves in petty turf wars. These groups all have two things in common. Number one, they want to see Assad gone. Number two, they want to be in power. Those are the two things that they have in common. Let's try to talk about current events for a moment. On August 21st, there was a use of a weapon of mass destruction in a neighborhood in Damascus. About 1,429 people were killed, over 400 of them were children. Nothing I say today should be taken as minimizing this attack that was done by the Assad regime on its own country. And this is not the first time he's used gas. This was classified until just days ago, but he's used gas on his own people over a dozen times, and the deaths were only, I say only advisedly, but only in the hundreds, not in the thousands. In this war over the last 3 years, and this is a civil war, make no mistake about it. Over 100,000 people have been killed total. Tens of thousands of those are the result of the Assad regime. Since August 21st, various people, including the president, have called for military action against Syria. Since then, I've been involved, as many members of Congress have, in intense meetings, briefings, phone calls, conference calls, et cetera, et cetera. Indeed, well, let me say this. As time went on after August 21st, it became apparent to me that the President was going to do this. He was going to pull the trigger on military action. And what I'm about to tell you is something that is a bit of inside information, but as I went through these calls and these meetings, I wound up on Friday with a conference call with the White House. There were 3 briefers from the White House on Friday. That's a week ago yet, tomorrow. And on that phone call were members of the Foreign Relations Committee and the Armed Services Committee, both Republicans and Democrats. They spent about 30 minutes briefing us on what the situation was, what they intended to do, and kept referring to their duty to consult with Congress. We listened patiently for 30 minutes while they did that, and there was no doubt in my mind as I listened to that the President was ready to pull the trigger. Indeed, I wouldn't have been surprised if he would have pulled the trigger immediately after the phone call. It was that urgent. However, after the completion of the briefing by the White House, the team that was briefing ran into a buzzsaw, and the senators who were on the phone, starting with the Democrats, not the Republicans, were very critical of the President going to do this by himself without authorization from Congress. Both after the Democrats were done, the Republicans did the same thing, and I was, on the following day, on Saturday, I listened to the President's press conference where he said that he was going to ask Congress to authorize his action. Frankly, that didn't surprise me after the telephone call on Friday, and I was even less surprised when I heard the White House staff admitting on Sunday and Monday that it was on Friday night that he changed his mind, and I have no doubt that it was a result of that telephone call. Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution gives this power to Congress, not to the Chief Executive. There's the War Powers Act, which of course elaborates on that. I'm not going to go into that today, but I will have something to say about that when we get to the actual resolution on the floor. The policy of the United States on Syria right now, and this has been even prior to what happened on August 21st, is number one, that Assad should be gone. Now, that gets dicey after that because it isn't just Assad being gone. The policy of the United States is that it be done in a way that the United States wants it done. Number one, they want it done pursuant to Geneva peace talks. Number two, they want Assad to peacefully give up power. And number three, they want a peaceful transition to moderates in that country, and then all will be well. That is the policy of the United States. With all due respect, I think it is a wonderful goal. The likelihood of that happening, in my mind, is almost zero. So, the proposal by the President is to attack Syria militarily to punish Assad for the use of gas. But it is not to kill Assad, and it is not to change the Assad regime, but after the attack, the policy is to leave the Assad regime in power. Now, that to me seems difficult really to reconcile with the real world. When it's over, the goal is that Assad regime will still be in power. Now, really, that has to happen, and I'll tell you why. Remember what I said. You have an opposition that's made up of some pretty bad people, Al-Qaeda, al-Nusra, the Muslim Brotherhood. If indeed the Assad regime was removed through military power, the weapons of mass destruction that are present in Syria would fall into the hands of Al-Qaeda, al-Nusra, and the Muslim Brotherhood and others. The most obvious one would be al-Nusra. They are very similar to Al-Qaeda. Their goals and objectives are the same. They have set themselves up already as embedded in the government of places where the opposition has taken control. So there's tons of nerve gas and other weapons of mass destruction in Syria. We know where some of those are. Unfortunately, we don't know where all of those are. And if this attack unseats the Assad regime, it puts radicals in control of those weapons of mass destruction. Now, this is the problem I've got with that. I have asked over and over and over again in Washington, D.C., what are you going to do if that happens? What is the plan to keep weapons of mass destruction out of the hands of some very, very bad people? And I'm not getting answers to that are adequate, other than it'll be all right, and I'm not satisfied with that. Syria is not Iraq and Afghanistan. They have some very, very powerful friends. Indeed, the Assad regime wouldn't even be standing today if it wasn't for Russia and Iran/Hezbollah. Iran, or Hezbollah, which is controlled by Tehran, has sent about 6,000 very good fighters into Syria in the last year, and as a result of that, it's changed the battlefield in favor of Assad. My question has been, okay, if indeed we attack Syria, as the President suggests, what is Russia going to do? What is Iran, Hezbollah going to do? And what is the plan in that regard? I'm not getting good answers on that. And in any event, given all that, the arguments that are made for this are, number one, we have to do something. And so you say, well, why do we have to do something? And they say, well, our credibility will be damaged if we don't do something. Well, in my judgment, I think the argument could be just the opposite. If we do something and do what we're doing, that is attack them militarily, leave the Assad regime intact, people in that part of the world are going to be wringing their hands and say, what's the deal here? Indeed, after the attack, Assad's going to come out from under his rock, he's going to beat his chest, and he's going to say, look, I stood up to the American war machine, the biggest, the most powerful in the world, and I'm still here. So in my judgment, I think that hurts our credibility worse than actually doing nothing. So with that, I'll stand for your questions, and the bottom line here is I cannot support a military attack on Syria at this time. I don't deny that what he's done on August 21st was very, very bad. What he did before August 21st was even worse, where he's killed tens of thousands of people through conventional means, and also the fact that he's used gas previously. Anyway, with that, let's hear your probing questions.
Certainly, without military action, is there something that can be done? Last I heard, I mean, there were maybe hundreds of thousands of refugees fleeing that area. They're being attacked by their own government. Is there something that can be done by the U.S. in that regard? You know,
it's actually millions of refugees, and they're scattered amongst the countries that, with the exception of Israel, they're scattered amongst the countries that are adjacent. Obviously, the United States, as always, has been the biggest supporter of the people who come and need food and need clothing, need shelter. The United States has been in there already helping with that. But the answer is there are no good answers here. But my judgment is that the risk of doing something is worse than the risk of doing nothing. I really do not subscribe to this business about our credibility being damaged. One thing that has impressed me from my service on the Foreign Relations Committee and on the Intelligence Committee is we are the 800-pound gorilla on the face of this planet when it comes to military power. Every country in the world understands that. And we aren't 800 pounds by a little bit. We outrank everybody by a whole lot. Everybody understands that. And I don't think that's going to be damaged at all.
Senator, you kind of came out sort of earlier than a lot of your colleagues. Why did you kind of, in some ways, take the lead on your opinion on this?
Well, are you talking about from my Idaho colleagues, or are you talking about my DC colleagues?
In general, there's a lot of rumbles on where they're going to go, and it's one of those rare nonpartisan things.
Right.
We're all over the map.
Well, I was hesitant to start with because I deal with this every day back there. I mean, Syria's been an issue for the 4.5 years I've been serving on these committees. So I've got quite a bit of background and understand what's going on in those countries. I was reluctant when I first heard about it. Having said that, when I went back to DC, I said that I wanted to give the administration every opportunity to make their case as to why we should do this. And I sat in meetings ad nauseum, some closed, some open. and sat through hours and hours and hours of testimony and questions and everything else. I'm the number 2 person on the Republican side on the Foreign Relations Committee. I'm the number 3 person on the Republican side on the Intelligence Committee. Indeed, while I was back there, I was the number 1 person on the Intelligence Committee because the other 2 people that outranking weren't there. Having said all that, after I'd listened to everything I'd heard, I really felt that I was able to come to a conclusion on this. The administration said, this is a matter of national security for the American people. I couldn't get that. I couldn't connect the dots to get there. Now, having said that, if they were able to convince me that they had attacked one American person with weapons of mass destruction, any American interest, or any of our allies, this would have been an absolute no-brainer for me, and I would have come down differently on this. But to say that in a civil war, somebody used an inappropriate method of killing people when they used other methods of killing a whole lot more people, and that we should be in there to do something, and do something that may badly destabilize the region, and which, if chaos breaks out there, and some bad people get their hands on weapons of mass destruction, I think the risks far, far outweigh any benefit that could be done.
So is that something that, not to get into hypotheticals here, that would change your mind about military action?
If Assad or anyone attacked American interests,
yeah.
I think at that point, in virtually every interest, we have no choice. And every enemy of ours needs to understand the American people will stand shoulder to shoulder, opposing vehemently and with everything we've got if there is any attack on American people, American interests, or allies that we have treaties with. And indeed, I really believe that because of the strength that we have, that is a great deterrent and has been a strong deterrent over the years, because there's a lot of people out there that want to hurt us.
How much do you think the nation and Washington's experience with Iraq plays into this?
Well, anytime you're close to something that has just happened, it obviously affects the decision. Look, we were bogged down. I sat and listened to Dick Durbin, Democrat from Illinois, wringing his hands yesterday in a meeting about the fact that he had voted for the resolution on Afghanistan, believed it was the right thing to do, but he said, I had no idea I was voting for the longest war in American history, and obviously that's coloring his judgment, although he did vote to go here with military action. But America's war weary. There is no question about it, and I think that particularly as we go on here, we're going to have to be very cautious. Look, this, as I said, this is a different issue than Iraq or Afghanistan. If Iran keeps going down the road it is going down, it will get to a point where the national security of the United States is in danger, and that's going to be a situation where something is going to have to be done. And if you do this, I think it undercuts our ability, and for that matter, our wherewithal and just our thought process about being able to do something as far as Iran is concerned.
Do you have any idea how the vote in Congress may go? You think most of your colleagues will side with you?
I don't think so. In the Senate, I'm not as good at predicting in the House, but I think in the Senate, if you look at the way the vote went in the committee, it was 7-10. More Republicans voting no than yes, but more Democrats voting yes than no. I would say that in all likelihood, the president will be able to get people that may not ordinarily be inclined to vote for this. So I think he'll get the 51 votes that he needs in the Senate. This is not the usual 60 vote under the War Powers Act. There's ways they can get it to a 51 vote because of the importance of it. The War Powers Act was set up to do things that other actions in Congress don't do. The House, I'm not as good as predicting that. He did hook the Speaker already. I think that would get him a long ways to getting the 217 votes that he needs in the House. But again, I don't want to predict that. That needs to play out.
What have you heard from your constituents regarding Syria?
Well, the constituent input has been strongly opposed from a numerical standpoint. In fact, people are lit up on this. It would be comparable, I would say, to the gun debate we had earlier in the year, and to a degree the immigration we had earlier in the year. Interestingly enough, we come from a state that's relatively monolithic. I talk to my colleagues who come from swing states, and they get input, strong input from both sides. I'm fortunate, I guess, to come from a place where we are a lot more monolithic in our thinking. Good question, thank you. Okay, anybody on the phone got questions? Dan Pocky, you usually have something probing and in-depth to add to the conversation.
Thanks, Senator. The war-weary question was the one I wanted to ask, and it got asked.
Okay, thank you. All right, are we good here? Again, thank you all. Number one, thank you all for coming, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to answer to Idaho people about why I have voted the way I have and why I will vote when we get to the actual resolution on the floor. Thank you all for coming.